This story is about a daughter-in-law who immediately after getting married, told her frustrated mother-in-law that her son got divorced because she treated him poorly. Now, it seems that the power dynamics in her husband's family have been well balanced. Let's take a look together. Please subscribe and like our channel.
Hello, I'm a woman living in a small regional town. I was born and raised here, close to my parents' home. My husband, on the other hand, is from Seoul, but he moved to my town for a job at the company I work at, and that's how we met and got married. We're both in our late 20s and have been married for a year. We're enjoying our sweet honeymoon phase, going on weekend trips, trying out local restaurants, and enjoying dates we couldn't have while we were dating. My husband is the second of two brothers. His dad is divorced and living back at his family home. My mother-in-law seems to think of her daughter-in-law as a maid. No one can predict what will happen in a marriage. But I suspect the reason for my father-in-law's divorce was my mother-in-law. When I first visited my husband's family, they spoke dismissively about my hometown, as if it was incredibly rural. Compared to Seoul, it is quite rural. But I question whether they needed to be so obviously dismissive. Annoyed, I complained to my husband, who apparently gave my mother-in-law a piece of his mind. However, she was furious with him, even going as far as to say that he'd married the wrong woman. My husband also received calls from his father and uncle, who berated him for siding with me over his own mother. Despite these incidents and others before our marriage, I still wanted to marry my husband. I believed he was a fair person, and that I wouldn't suffer much because of his family. Even if I did something wrong, I felt my husband would always be on my side. So with that confidence, we proceeded with our marriage. People say marriage is reality, but my husband hasn't changed after marriage. He's always on my side, and gets even more angry than me when something bad happens to me. My mother-in-law and uncle share a similar vibe. They're inconsistent people with an enormous pride in themselves, which often leads them to speak dismissively of others. Because I'm from a rural area, my husband's family seem to look down on me even more. However, whether from an economic or well-being standpoint, my parents are better off than my husband's family, even though they don't want to admit it. At our engagement party, my mother-in-law unexpectedly brought up the topic of dowry. We had planned to receive equal support from both families for our wedding, so we agreed not to have a dowry. But my mother-in-law suddenly suggested at the engagement party that it would be fine to have just a basic dowry. She said this as if she was doing us a favor. But my husband immediately countered, "Mom, we agreed not to have a dowry. What are you talking about?" To which she responded, "Well, we should still receive what we're supposed to." My husband replied, "Then Mom, you and Dad should provide us with a house. Then we can discuss the dowry." At this, my mother-in-law's face turned red. This led to my husband being scolded by his father. He was accused of being a terrible son who humiliates his mother in public. My husband argued logically, but it was of no use. My in-laws and uncle teamed up to argue that my husband was in the wrong. They were amazed at how stubborn he was. Not long after our wedding, we had to attend a friend's wedding in Seoul. The wedding was on a Sunday. But we went to Seoul on Saturday, enjoyed our time, stayed overnight at a motel, attended the wedding the next day, and then came back. We arrived in Seoul around lunchtime on Saturday and decided to visit my in-laws first, so we could enjoy the rest of our day in peace. That day, we had lunch at my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law kept telling me to set this and that side dish, so I did as I was told. While having lunch, my mother-in-law said she thinks of me as her daughter. The thought that occurred to me then was, why is she suddenly acting like this? After we finished eating, I did the dishes. We planned to leave my in-laws' house shortly after. However, my mother-in-law thought we were going to stay at their house and attend the wedding the next day. My husband insisted that he had clearly told her that we were going to go out and have fun on Saturday, book a place to stay, and sleep there. My mother-in-law kept saying to me, "You're better than my daughter. I think of you as my daughter." Now, she wanted to clean. I'm not sure, but it seemed like she wanted to do a thorough cleaning while I was there. My husband said, "We should get going now." My mother-in-law asked where we would go. My husband said we had an appointment, hadn't he told her we were sleeping outside? My mother-in-law said she was hearing this for the first time, and she wanted to clean. I told my mother-in-law, "Mother, so you called me your daughter today to make me clean? I'm not your daughter. I can see you're trying to take advantage of me by treating me like your daughter." This caught my mother-in-law off guard. The dishes I did today are the first and last time I'll do them. From now on, my husband will do them. I said this, greeted my in-laws, and left their house. About 2 months after we got married, we went to Seoul for my husband's cousin's wedding. We didn't sleep at my in-laws' house, but booked an accommodation. We had lunch with my in-laws' family at a restaurant, and then met my husband's friends and hung out. The next day, we met my in-laws again at the wedding venue. At the reception, my in-laws were sitting at the same table as their sister-in-law. There happened to be some space at that table, so my husband and I sat there. One of the aunts asked, "Is your mother-in-law treating you well?" It seemed like a joke. But I said, "Yes, she treats me well. Except for the time she insisted on receiving a dowry that we had agreed not to take during the pre-wedding meeting. And the time she tried to make me do a big cleaning at her house, I didn't feel bad." I said this out loud. The aunt said, "Where do you find such a mother-in-law these days? She must be crazy." They said, "We didn't even treat our daughters-in-law like that in our time." I told them that each house has a different atmosphere. That evening, my in-laws and uncle-in-law took turns calling my husband and causing a fuss. My husband asked if I was lying and why they did something embarrassing to be known by others. But again, my husband became a bad son who sided with his wife and embarrassed his mother. My husband was talking back, and it was cute. It's so nice to have a husband who stands up for me. Arguing with his parents and brother. Despite experiencing this, my mother-in-law couldn't give up the idea of exploiting me. Even after that, whenever we went to my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law always wanted me to do the dishes, but my husband always did them. My husband said he did the dishes because he didn't want to see his mother-in-law's sour face. There was even a time when my mother-in-law got angry at my husband, asking why he was doing the dishes when he had a daughter-in-law. My husband said, "If we go to my wife's house and eat, she does the dishes. So if we come here, I should do it." Hearing this, my uncle-in-law started causing a fuss. He said he had been patient with our behavior so far, embarrassingly enough. He said it was our duty to move as the elders wanted. But we lacked the basic understanding. So we were labeled as the terrible ones who deeply upset my mother-in-law. Terrible ones? I was really annoyed at this point. So, I retorted that the real terrible one was my brother-in-law. I questioned how someone his age could live off their parents and not contribute to any housework. I asked if he could swallow the food that his mother prepared for him, if he was comfortable wearing clothes that his mother washed for him, and if he ever felt the need to help out when his mother was vacuuming. My brother-in-law just stared blankly at me, seemingly without a response. My father-in-law coughed awkwardly and sarcastically commented, "We've got a great daughter-in-law." Then my mother-in-law said, "You must be an uncultured girl who grew up in the countryside with no proper guidance." I couldn't believe my ears. I said, "Mother, it seems like you want to divorce your son and take him away. How can two brothers who grew up in the same household be so different? My brother-in-law might have followed his terrible parents and ended up divorced and miserable. But my husband is different. He married a daughter from a wealthy rural family and is living well." I don't remember my exact words, but I said something along those lines. My mother-in-law's face was a sight to behold. My husband said, "Mom, are you trying to get me divorced too? Please stop this." But my brother-in-law started yelling and swearing at my husband. As we were leaving, I said to my mother-in-law, "How was your son raised that he uses such vulgar language?" I then politely bid her farewell. My husband was amazed. He asked how I could speak so well. In reality, I was the one amazed by my husband. I thought he was only kind because he treated me well. After that incident, my in-law family couldn't treat my husband and I carelessly. We mostly ate out when we were in Seoul with my husband's family. And if we ate at my in-law's house, my husband always did the dishes. I only did the dishes about twice. Even when my husband did the dishes, no one in the in-law family said anything. I know I'm not a saint. But if my mother-in-law hadn't tried to boss me around, I think I would have done the dishes. Not that I would have taken the initiative to do a deep clean of the house though.
What could be the meaning of demanding a bridal gift in a half-and-half marriage? Is the day the daughter-in-law comes the day to clean the entire house? It seems that the mother-in-law must have dozed off during every home education class.